Yes, sir. Okay. Good morning, y'all. Please stand and let's sing together hymn number 1021 in the teal hymnal, A Little Bill Weathers, Lean on Me. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can feel those of your needs that you won't let show. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll show you load if you just call me. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Yes.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thanks to Peggy Eckloff for helping to lead our music today. Yeah. I want to begin, as always, by welcoming you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where we join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or, as we like to say in short, to create community, find meaning, and live justly, work for justice, whatever works for you. Welcome to each and every one of you who are here today joining us in this space, as well as those of you who are live streaming with us this morning. It's great to know that you're here as well. So welcome to one and all. We embrace all that you bring with you to this space, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences, all that helps make you who you are. And this includes those who hear me say this each Sunday, whether you're here in person, joining us online, or perhaps even joining us for the first time this morning. We're so glad to have all of you. So welcome, one and all. I do have a few announcements to go over before we greet one another. One, you will notice that our unity candle is lit at the front of our sanctuary. This is something we do when one of our members has passed away during the week. It's been happening all too often recently, but this past Monday, Lois Packer passed away. For those who remember Lois, she was very active here many years ago, a true leader and matriarch of our congregation. For a few years, she was back in the Seattle area with her family, and then came back a few years before COVID hit. And I don't think a lot of us have been able to see her since COVID, but I saw her just a couple of weeks ago at the clergy luncheon at Rockwood, and I was grateful that I could do that. But an incredibly good-hearted, intelligent, sweet, kind person, and she will be missed. So we're going to keep this candle lit throughout our service is a symbol of our appreciation for her life and the light that she brought to our community. We are also in the midst of our annual auction, where you can go online and bid on items that folks have donated as a fundraiser for our church. They're also listed on the wall in the back for those who are here in person. So appreciate everybody's generosity in either bidding or contributing or both. Thank you all for all that you've done to make it a success. We are getting close to our goal already, and we still have plenty of time left. So thank you so much. Also want to remind you that I think it's become our annual Thanksgiving potluck. I think this will be the third or fourth year we've done it now, so that counts as an ingrained institution now in a church. And thanks to those who are organizing it. But it's going to happen this month on November 24th. I think that's the Sunday before Thanksgiving, at 12:30 following our second service. So if you want to bring a Thanksgiving-style dish to share, turkey will be provided, and we sure would love to have all of you. So please put that on your calendar as well. And I feel obliged to say something about the election, because it's coming up in just a couple of days. I have no idea what to say. I know we have been, a lot of us have been pretty anxious, feeling pretty anxious about the potential outcome, given just how close it is, and worried about what the consequences might be if our side doesn't win. I'm not going to make any assumptions there, but this is a worry, I'm sure, that is common amongst just about everybody who's voting in this country, regardless of who they're voting for, sadly. So next week, my sermon, I can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of a response to whatever happens this week. So I'll have a lot more to say then. I think it's going to have, it will most certainly include the suggestion that we should stay true to our principles and our values always, no matter what the circumstances we find ourselves in, whether it is a positive space or a negative space. I think the Stoics used to say that virtue is the greatest good, because virtue is the only thing that has meaning in all circumstances. And that means that if following our virtues or principles, whatever you want to call them, our values, brings goodness to our lives for some reason, that's wonderful, but that's not why we do it. If it causes us to suffer, living by our virtues and our principles causes us to suffer, that's okay too, because we don't do it to prevent our own suffering. We do it for the sake of living out our virtues and our values. So that's a kind of a Stoic practice, and I think no matter what happens this week, to put on your Stoic caps or Stoic shoes or whatever it might be, and remember that we will survive whatever circumstances befall us. Every major historical event in human history has been occupied by people just like us. And we don't think about that. We think about the players that are mentioned in the historical stories. But ordinary people had to decide in some of the worst circumstances whether or not they were going to be at their best or at their worst. And as Unitarians, I hope we'll decide to be at our best in good times and bad. So that's it. That's all I can say for now. I hope that you will take a few moments here now to greet one another. If you are joining us for the first time, please don't be too shy, or even just more recently. This is a good group of people, and there's enough of us here that you don't actually have to walk too far to meet somebody new this morning. So go for it. All right, there'll be more opportunity, as always, to visit after our service during our social hour, so please join us for that. Grab a cup of coffee or tea behind the mysterious wall over there, if you're not familiar where that stuff is. But for now, we're going to move forward by lighting our chalice. The chalice is the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
For our opening reflection, I offer the words of Timothy Paul Jones, professor of Christian apologetics at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, writing on the books of the Old Testament. Different communities of people who call themselves Christians use different Old Testaments. Everyone who claims to be Christian agrees about 39 of the texts in the Old Testament. But if you attended Mass in a Roman Catholic congregation this weekend, the Old Testament readings would come from a canon that includes 7 books more than the 39 in the Old Testament at the Protestant church down the street. A few blocks further down the street, at a Jewish synagogue, a reader who probably doesn't believe in the resurrection of Jesus at all will be chanting a Hebrew or Aramaic text from the same Old Testament canon that the Protestants are studying in translated form, but not the Roman Catholics. The Orthodox Church across town will be reading from an Old Testament that encompasses a total of 10 more books than Jews or Protestants recognize. All of these disparities spawn a difficult question. If people who claim to believe the Bible can't be sure about which books belong in the Old Testament, how can anyone reasonably believe what the Old Testament has to say?
I told Dick that I so appreciated that quote from the professor at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, because that's where Todd and I met. And the whole time I was driving from Auburn University to go to graduate school that fall, my sister was in the car with me, and we were chanting, "You're not marrying a minister. You're not marrying a minister. You're not marrying a minister." Please stand and let's sing together. Hymn 1007 in the Till Book, "There's a River Flowing in My Soul." There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's
Well, now, I don't think I was a minister when we got married. I snuck it in on her. I snuck it in on her later. So we are going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning, including the people of Ukraine and that region of the world who are being impacted by the continuing war and violence there, the people of Israel and the Palestinian people, people of Iran and Lebanon, and people in that region of the world who are also suffering from the unnecessary violence and cruelty and disregard for human life happening there. Let's do take a moment of silence on behalf of those you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like.
John Sherrod. Steve.
Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
A mellow dew come morning will shine, and the sun waken the meadow. Gives us moments of delight, makes a cruel world seem alright. Graceful day, the crowds they heave and flow. You can hear the engines running. The world is changing rapidly into much uncertainty. Darkness falls, we venture out into the night and realize our dreams and shed our human plight. And so the night moves gently o'er the ground, and the stars like twinkling eyes look down. Are they watching over us, teaching us to love and trust? Darkness falls, we venture out into the night and realize our dreams and shed our human plight. Echoes hammering, constructing the conceits of men. Unfolding, always flowing, it will never end.
Richard Wall, thank you so much for giving us our special music today. And more to come. So, right now we're going to have our story for all ages, so anybody who wants to come up to the front is welcome to do so. All right, I have brought a familiar face. Look who it is. It is not from Noth. Or is it not from Noth? Did I just give a double negative? Yeah. It's not. Well, in this case, I don't think I did, given that his name is not. But it doesn't really matter. We're really glad to see you. How are things going on your planet these days? Better now that the war has ended. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So just to catch some of you folks up, Noth is from another planet, the planet Noth, in which everyone speaks gibberish. Can you give us an example, Noth? Yes, it is true. Earth words express meaning. On Noth, words mean nothing and sound like this. Okay, very good. That does sound strange. But you also have never had conflict on your planet, is that correct? Yes, since nobody ever said anything meaningful, there were never any disagreements. At least not until I met you. Yeah. I'm sorry, I suggested that Noth should go back to his planet and try to say something meaningful. And that started a war, the first time in our history. Yeah, people started disagreeing with each other. Well, I'm very sorry, but I'm glad to hear that the war's over now. And if I remember correctly, there are no weapons on Noth, so you fought your war simply by calling each other names. Is that right? That's right. My own mother said to me, "Ooh, that's got to hurt." But again, glad the war is over. Are you and your mother speaking again now? Oh yes, just this morning she said to me. That sounds nice, I think. So tell us what brought the war to an end? We decided to create a democracy. You did, so that our people can make decisions together rather than fighting over our differences. You know, that's a really wonderful solution. And that's why I'm here. Why is that? I'm running for president of Noth, and I'd like your endorsement. My endorsement, you know, I'm honored. Usually I can't give an endorsement from the pulpit, but since you're from another planet, I don't think it would mind. So yeah, absolutely. Wait just a minute. What was that? It is I, Nor from Noth. And I too am running for president and would like your endorsement. Well, this really does come as a surprise. I've known Noth for a while, but I suppose in fairness I should hear what your opposition has to say before I make a decision. So Noth, why don't you go first? Why should people vote for you? Because Nor is a... Ooh. Now I don't think that's true, is it? That is not true. You should endorse me because Noth is a... Wow. Listen, are either of you going to say something meaningful, or are you just calling each other names? We're just calling each other names, of course. Yes, since we know nothing about democracy, we are following the example of American politics. Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. But don't you think that it would be better if instead of attacking each other, you maybe explain some of your ideas about how to improve your society? That isn't calling each other names the point of democracy? Yeah, politics call each other names on behalf of everyone else. We let them do our fighting for us. That's what you do with politicians, huh? Well, that's not really the point of democracy, but I can understand why you might think it is, observing our politics. So do I have your endorsement? Don't give him your endorsement. He's a... Okay, now, okay. Listen, I'm afraid I can't give either of you my endorsement. I just wish I had followed the prime directive to begin with and never suggested that you start saying meaningful things. But now that you do, perhaps you should both go back to your planet and explain to voters some of your ideas about how to improve your society rather than calling each other names. Maybe we should make it illegal to call each other names. That's a great idea. Would you like to deny thy president? Glad you agree. Would you like to deny thy president? Okay, good luck in your election, and thank you for coming.
For today's meditation, I invite you into a state of repose. Make yourselves comfortable. Close your eyes if you like, and breathe slowly, deeply, mindfully. Reflect on the words of Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you've been, but welcome you based on your virtues. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. And if there are no gods, then you will be gone, but will have lived a noble life that will live on in the memories of your loved ones.
Somewhere in this city, someone is dying right now. Somewhere in this city, someone is crying out loud. Somewhere in this city, lovers are falling apart. And somewhere in this city, someone's losing their heart. Somewhere in this city, someone is taking a vow. Somewhere in city, someone's hands are shaking right now. Somewhere in this city, hope is in the air. And somewhere in this city, someone's whispering a prayer. Somewhere in this city, someone is waiting for me. Somewhere in this city, there is some place that I'm meant to be. Somewhere in this city, someone's dreams are coming true. And somewhere in this city, I know someday mine will too. Somewhere in this city, a child is being born. Somewhere in this city, someone's going home alone. Somewhere in this city, the world is coming to an end. And somewhere in this city, it is starting all over again. Somewhere in this city, someone is waiting for me. Somewhere in this city, there is some place that I'm meant to be. Somewhere in this city, someone's dreams are coming true. And somewhere in this city, I know someday mine will too. Somewhere in this city, someone is dying right now.
Thanks again, Richard. For me, that song is the best part of our service today. Man, I'm so impressed. Just beautifully sung, but the poetry that you put in that song are just magnificent. Thank you. Very moving. So if I were going to teach a course on how to be a proper Unitarian minister, which is never going to happen, I would begin by teaching about shamanism. And this may seem a strange comparison coming from one who claims to be a rational, modern thinker, and the term shaman conjures images of primitive, superstitious persons chanting, shaking rattles, and drinking ayahuasca or some other hallucinogenic tea. They believe in magic, in spirits, and that sickness is caused by invisible darts sent by unseen forces and evil enemies. And in preparation for this message, I tested this assumption by prompting generative artificial intelligence, which is one word, shaman. And within seconds, it created 3 images. 2 of them appeared to be primitive Chinese men with painted faces and feathers in their hair, wearing colorful homemade clothes and costume jewelry. And the third appeared to be a Native American woman dressed similarly. When I prompted the AI with shaman ceremony, it quickly produced 3 more images, all of which showed a similarly dressed shaman sitting and preparing to pass around a vessel of presumably hallucinogenic tea to those gathered around them in a circle. Although generated by AI, these images are ultimately based upon our most common associations and stereotypes, some of which are true. And even though I'm from San Francisco, I do not wear feathers in my hair, colorful clothes, chant, or pass out peyote. But I still think that Unitarian ministers ought to be more like shamans than any other type of religious leader. The notion of calling or being called to ministry is a good place to begin explaining what I mean. In most religious traditions, such a calling refers to a sense that one feels within themselves, often attributed to the deity that they worship or believe in. It's an internal, very personal calling, if you will. And if one is serious enough about it to formally undergo years of formal training, usually in a seminary or in the Christian or Jewish traditions, for example, or under the guidance of a Sikh or others recognized religious scholars from the Islamic tradition, or being born into a priestly class or attending a proper seminary in the Hindu tradition, only then does one become suitable for ordination as a priest or a rabbi or a minister, or otherwise recognized as a legitimate religious leader. With few exceptions, the right to ordain or grant such recognition belongs to other religious authorities. In Catholicism, it's the local diocese or archdiocese overseen by a bishop, which is responsible for ordaining priests, deacons, bishops, and the like. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, the local diocese or eparchy, also under the authority of a bishop, ordains priests and deacons. The bishops themselves are confirmed by a holy synod, a governing body of senior bishops. In the Anglican or Episcopal Church, each diocese, also led by a bishop, is responsible for ordinations. In Presbyterianism, a body of leaders called the presbyteries examine and ordain ministerial candidates. Among Lutherans, the bishop of the synod ordains pastors, often with the involvement of a synod council. The association or conference handles ordination in the United Church of Christ, as do regional bodies among the disciples of Christ. In Buddhism, which I've not mentioned yet, senior monks or nuns ordain new monks and nuns. And in some religious traditions, there is no formal process like ordination. Their religious leaders are simply recognized as such by their communities only once they have been informally approved by religious authorities, as happens in Islam and Hinduism. So an imam, for example, would just be called an imam because some religious authority said they're an imam. The point not to be missed is that in all of these traditions, the wider community has nothing to do with the ordination of their religious leaders, and in many cases has little choice in who their religious leaders will be. They are simply sent or assigned by some outside religious authority and may be removed by them as well with little notice. This, however, is not the case when it comes to shamans. And before I say more, it should be understood, despite the enticing title of my sermon, that there is no such thing as shamanism, since there are so many different kinds of shamans among different peoples around the world. in places as diverse as Peru and Southeast Asia, North and South America, China, Tibet, Russia, Japan, Australia, Europe, and so forth, dating back thousands of years. The word shaman actually has its roots in the Tungus language of Siberia, where it's pronounced saman and means those who know, or one who knows, referring to a person who's believed to have access to and influence over the spiritual world and who serves as a healer, guide, or mediator between people and the spirits. Luba Johnson, who was born and raised in Russia, was here for the first service, and she actually told me that Putin is a believer in shamans, and he has a shaman that he flies to Siberia regularly to consult with, and that there's another famous shaman in Russia who is in prison because he brought back some messages from the spirits Putin didn't like. In their 500-year history on the subject, Shamans Through Time, edited by anthropologist Jeremy Narby and Francis Huxley, we learned that there can be no shamanic beliefs or cults and therefore no shamanic religion, for the simple reason that the word does not designate a set of beliefs that manifest themselves through a set of customs. It merely affirms the existence of a certain kind of person who plays a religious and social role. So it's just a title. And this means that whatever one says about shamans or shamans cannot be considered ubiquitous of everyone described as such. Their variety and their differences are simply too great. In fact, even speaking in generalities is probably going too far. Nevertheless, one of the qualities that I have read about that has stuck with me in regards to the sometimes reluctant shaman, or I say in regard to the sometimes reluctant shaman. Moses, for example, is such a figure, having tried, at least according to the Hebrew tale, to talk Yahweh out of choosing him to lead his people out of bondage into the promised land. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt, he asks. But in the end, he has no choice. It's the same with the shamans. Becoming the spiritual leader or healer of one's community may be the last thing that one wants to do, but unlike the other religious traditions that I've mentioned, many tribal communities themselves decide who their shamans will be. And declining the invitation could actually get their choices killed, just as being bad at the job can. So if the community calls you to be a shaman, you better say yes, and you better very quickly learn how to be good at your job. In some shamanic societies, the shaman doesn't even have an inner or divine calling, but a communal calling. They're called by their peers, their neighbors, to be of service to others in a very special and important way. They're called by a sense of duty to their neighbors rather than by spirits or by some divine power. And they are authorized to lead the very community they serve, not by an official body or a higher religious authority who ordains them. And that's how it is, at least that's how it's supposed to be in Unitarianism. Our liberal religious tradition gives and always has given the local congregation the exclusive authority to ordain and call our ministers. Sadly, over time, the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is supposed to be a service organization, has gotten around this by creating the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, the MFC, that only welcomes those who meet its strict requirements and has created a tightly controlled gateway between the ministers and congregations. Without MFC approval, never the twain shall meet. And for many decades now, our ministerial aspirants have believed that they must go through all the requirements this committee has laid out for them to even hope to ever have a congregation. And congregations have also been deceived to believe that they must go through the MFC to find ministers. Too many of us have come to think that it is the MFC that makes a minister, not the local congregations who ordain and install them or us. So my advice these days is for congregations and ministers to recognize this egregious affront to our religious freedoms by ignoring the MFC and creating other ways for us to find each other. Local congregations should be very cautious about calling ministers who believe that they work for the Unitarian Universalist Association and the Ministerial Fellowship Committee rather than the congregations they serve, who called them, installed them, maybe ordained them, and pay them. But my point here is that traditionally the calling and approval of Unitarian ministers is like that of shamans. When people ask me if I felt a call to ministry, I say yes. Were you called by God? No. Was it a spiritual calling? No. Was it a feeling that you had? No. I was ordained and called to ministry in the only way that our liberal tradition allows, by my community. There's nothing magical or mysterious about it, nor anything that could possibly make such work more meaningful than to be called by those you serve. In a 1995 essay, anthropologist Eleanor Ott says, "The situation today is that the word shaman has been usurped by the popular imagination and the popular marketplace, and is now superimposed on all manner of persons who bear little and no resemblance to the traditional shaman in any culture. Without a community that recognizes the new shamans as an integral part of the culture, what makes these people in fact shamans at all, except that they so call themselves?" I believe the same question should be asked of today's Unitarian ministers. Without understanding it is a church community that recognizes and calls them as ministers, what makes them a minister at all, except that the MFC says so? Another interesting parallel, at least between myself and shamans, which I was really surprised to discover, is that we are ventriloquists. Yeah, on the very first page of Shamans Through Time, we learned that when the Russians began colonizing eastern Siberia in the 17th century, they discovered certain individuals who claimed that they could communicate with spirits. The shaman played drums, sang, and put on ventriloquist and trickster performances, imitating animal sounds in the dark or pretending to stab themselves with knives. When the Russian revolutionary Waldemar Borgeros was exiled in Siberia in the 19th century, he encountered the Chukchi, or as Luba tells me they say in Russia, the Chukchi. I don't think I can say Chukchi, so I'll just say Chukchi. The Chukchi people, and he later wrote about them in a book entitled Doomed to Inspiration. Although beating the drum is the basic means of preparing to communicate with the spirits, Borgeros says various tricks performed by the Chukchi shamans included ventriloquism. Have to be learned in the pre-preparatory state. The shamans, of course, assert that the tricks were done by spirits and denied any hand, whatever, in the proceeding of such a character. Now, I'm not a good enough ventriloquist to get away with a fib like that, but apparently some of them were. So the anthology also includes an essay that's actually entitled Ventriloquist and Trickster Performances for Healing and Divination. In his 1908 essay written by another Russian exile to Siberia, seem to be a lot of them, we learn of a young shaman who described as imitating the howling of the wolf, the groaning of the cargoose, and the voices of other animals, his guardian spirits. He was a ventriloquist. Shamans versed in this art are believed to possess particular power. So it's a funny coincidence, I think, because I also bring ventriloquism, such as it is, into my ministry, which probably makes me rare, actually, among Unitarian ministers. But finding that it has also long been practiced by shamans gives me really a special sense of kinship with this tradition. But more important is the similar duties, responsibilities assigned to both shamans and Unitarian ministers. In addition to ventriloquism and drumming, shamans often chant. Now, I don't chant any better than I sing, or keep my lips from moving, for that matter. But my sermons are used for the same purpose. I once engaged in an ayahuasca ceremony led by a Huichol shaman who chanted the entire time that I and the other participants were under the influence of the hallucinogenic brew. In the Huichol tradition from northern Mexico, such chanting is done to keep participants tethered to this world so they don't get lost in the spirit realm and can find their way back to the real world by following the shaman's voice as one who is able, it is said, to exist in both realms at once. And this is my goal of ministry, too, which is why I so often emphasize reality and reason, because I believe religion is best when it helps us cope with reality, harsh as it may be, rather than as an excuse to justify our delusions. And by the way, I consider Richard's song that he wrote such a chant, right? Because it's hard to hear, but it was truth, and it helped us deal with the reality in a meaningful way. It brings us back to the reality of what's going on in our world and our cities. It's just beautiful, just perfect today, Richard. Thank you. Over the years, I've often been criticized for not being spiritual by some who think it is my job to take them into the realm of spirits and myths and superstition and to leave them there. On the contrary, my task, as far as I'm concerned, is to use my sermons as a kind of chant to keep them tethered to reality and to guide them back to reality. This is why last year I gave a sermon entitled Spiritual with a question mark. How many of you remember that? 2 of you, thank you. 3, 4, I know. It's a trick. I know a lot of you did. So. It's a trick question. Damn it. Anyway, in that sermon, I said, in part, I do not agree that reason and physical reality are barriers to finding meaning and purpose and joy and truth and wonder in life. On the contrary, they are the very processes that can bring us to our knees before the altar of life, that enable us to better cope with reality, to endure suffering, to pursue the world's mysteries and wonders, and to truly live by standing wrapped in awe. And only a few weeks ago, I gave a sermon on theology in which I ultimately defined God as reality, explaining that so much of what theologians say about God, whom I don't believe exist, is true of reality, which I not only believe exists, but believe is the only thing that does exist and can exist. Reality is everywhere, and it's in everything because all that exists must be real. What the priests and preachers of most religions say about God is true of reality, that we should spend our lives seeking it. Our human minds cannot comprehend the whole of reality, but when we do sometimes catch glimpses of what is real, we are awestruck, and our lives and our societies are transformed by the encounter. What we know of reality should be our guide. We should devote our minds and our hearts to reality and our lives to its pursuit. Finally, there is the parallel between the shaman's use of hallucinogenic compounds, alone or in communal ceremonies. It is the shaman's task to enter into altered states of consciousness, or to lead others there, in order to break free of our limited understanding of the world, to see things from a new perspective, and to abandon our false assumptions and our routine beliefs. These psychotropic journeys are meant to expand our consciousness, not to deceive it. It is believed by some, including myself, that the augmented reality that we see under the influence of these compounds are symbolic representations of realities we cannot otherwise perceive, like microscopic and quantum realities, which explains why shamans can so often correctly diagnose illnesses without the use of microscopes or other medical equipment. Anthropologist Jeremy Narby first considered this possibility while looking at a collection of paintings by shaman Pablo Amaringo, and was stunned to notice double helixes in one of them. By the way, I have a copy of those a book that has all of those paintings in them. It's just remarkably beautiful. They're paintings of what he saw in his journeys, and you will see a lot of things that appear to be part of our bodies, things we wouldn't see with the naked eye. And a few weeks after Narby made this connection, he showed it to a microbiologist who responded in the same way. Look, there's collagen. And that's the axon's embryonic network with its nutrites. These are triple helixes. And that's DNA from afar looking like a telephone cord. This looks like chromosomes at a specific phase. There's the spread out form of DNA, and right next to it are DNA spools in their nucleosome structure. No wonder, as Narby points out, 74% of pharmacopoeia's plant-based remedies were discovered by traditional societies. 74%. And this is why my sermons are always meant to induce an alternative way of thinking about things, an altered state of consciousness. That's what I want to invoke here each Sunday. I don't go into a sermon thinking that I have all the answers and wish to present myself as one who does. This is so because I consider the Unitarian version of substances like ayahuasca and peyote to be our questions. It is not by coming for answers, but by questioning the things we've been told are true or have convinced ourselves are true that puts us in an altered state and expands our consciousness. Questions are our gateway drug. They are our gateway to intellectual integrity and our gateway to better understanding truth and our gateway to coping with reality on its own terms. And that's why my sermons don't provide the answers of an expert, but the searching of a pilgrim who is wandering and wondering about life's perennial questions just like you are. And I have found that in my 25 years as a Unitarian minister, that Unitarians don't want to leave church with more answers, but with fewer of them than when they arrived. We prefer having our minds open, not shut, curious, not closed. All of this is why, rational as I am and intend to stay, I feel more akin to the shaman than to any other ministerial tradition. Although I cannot and would not wish to hand out peyote from the pulpit, nor pass around a bowl of ayahuasca, I do want you to leave each Sunday having had your perspective a little skewed and your mind more open to new and wondrous possibilities than you came with. So as your resident shaman, called to serve this community, if for some reason you are feeling a bit more certain now than when you came, please take 2 questions and call me in the morning. Thank you.
Let's stand for our closing hymn, or not hymn, song. I Can See Clearly Now by Johnny Nash, and the words are on our screen and on the handout in your order of service. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me down. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. I think I can make it now, the pain is gone. All the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. Look all around, there's nothing but blue sky. Look straight ahead, there's nothing but blue sky. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day.
For our benediction, I offer the words of British Romantic poet, venturesome traveler, and English peer, Lord Byron. If I am a fool, it is at least a doubting one, and I envy no one the certainty of self-approved wisdom. Amen. Blessed be. Alam alaikum and shalom.